Today is July the 20th at Oglethorpe County Library with Bob Maxwell.
Right. I'd like to start off saying that I was at North Georgia College my freshman year on December the 7th in 1943-41 when they dropped the bomb. And we were quite excited about the war being started, and of course I finished that year and finished another year at North Georgia College and got out and graduated in March. We went through the summer curriculum so that we could get a quarter ahead and go into service. And I got out of North Georgia College in March of 43, and in May of 43 I was entered Keesler Field at Gulfport, Mississippi, and stayed there 43 days, in what you call shipping my civilian clothes home and picking up my Army type clothes. And I qualified for Aviation cadets, and so they didn't have they were filling up the pocket, I guess, and getting a group of us to go to San Antonio, Texas. And once one group moved out of San Antonio, Texas, well, we moved in. My class was 44H is what I ended up in, and as soon as the San Antonio group moved out of training there, they took code and physicals and all those kind of things, you know, this Morse code, did dot stuff, and we left from there and went to primary school at Ballinger, Texas. Now primary, saying this because really I got in on the tail end of the World War II, and I was a qualified fighter pilot going to Calcutta, India when the war was over. So I didn't get any overseas time at all. But going back to training right there, we flew PT-19s at Ballinger, Texas, and I had the only woman instructor in the Air Force to teach me how to fly. All the rest of them were Navy people. Navy had a lot of women, but the Army didn't have but one, and I ended up with her. But she was real tough and taught us how to fly. I think out of 5 students, one of them didn't finish. From there, I went to San Angelo, Texas, and flew BT-13s. That was a 450 horsepower engine, and we graduated a little higher every primary to basic to advanced and so on, a little bit bigger airplane all along. And one of the things that I remembered one time, I was taking an instrument flight ride, check ride, and you do unusual positions, and the instructor was up front, and we had a hood that went all the way over the back cockpit where we couldn't see out. And he was going to put it in unusual positions and things like that, and if I could get out of it, I would be what you call qualified on instruments. And it was a kind of a tough mental deal, I guess. But I went through all the navigation and the radio navigation, the unusual positions, which was the last part. But this other friend of mine had said to take a cigar and chew on it, and that would kind of calm you down a little bit, and you wouldn't get too uptight and so forth and mess up your check ride. And so I did, and I had the old cigar in my mouth, and of course this instructor up front, he didn't know I had a cigar in my mouth. But he stood around and he turned that thing upside down and wiggled his stick and said, "You got it." Well, I was trying to figure out which way we was going to go and get out of that thing, and that cigar was getting in the way, so I spit the cigar out, and the cigar went right straight up over my head due to gravity, you know. And I says, "Well, I'll be darned, I'm upside down." So I wheel that thing around and come up flat and level and says, "Hey, that's real good, let's go home, you passed." So I went on to advanced training in Eagle Pass, Texas. That's on the Mexican border, and flew AT-6s. And that was just a regular routine type thing. We shot our first machine guns. We had one machine gun in the wing of an AT-6, and it was a quite exciting airplane, and we went through all of the takeoffs and landings and items like that. And one of the things, after graduating in September the 8th, 1944, in class of 44H, we went into P40 training. And the P40s, well, airplanes that they had used at the Panama Canal to patrol all that in the ocean. And they had wore those things out. I mean, they had a lot of high time on them, and they brought them up out of Texas for us to get checked out in them, and before going into a bigger airplane. And this airplane was 1,150 horsepower, and it was about the best airplane we had at the start of the war. But we had 5 flights in that thing, and 5 2-hour flights. And I remember going up in the thing, and the first flight was pretty good. The second flight, they were supposed to do high-speed dives. And I pulled that old P40 up and looked around. There wasn't nobody under there, so the oil that rolled it down like that. But to begin with, all these airplanes, and all of them today, have trim tabs. And it's a little wheel right there, which controls a little wing on the rudder, or the elevator, or the ailerons, to make it easy and tender in order to control it. And so we knew where to set the trim tabs for takeoff and for landing and things like that, but they didn't tell us where to set them for high-speed dives. And I pulled that thing up right there and rolled it right straight down. I was about 16,000 feet. And I had that old thing going down pretty good. The old speedometer was coming on up to about 250, then to 300, then to 350. You got up about 375, it started going into a spiral to the left. And I put my foot on the rudder to try to straighten it out, and it wouldn't straighten out. And I put both feet on the same rudder, on the right rudder, and pushed as hard as I could, and that thing still kept on turning to the left and going straight down. And to get out of that spiral right there, I said, well, something's going to happen because the ground's coming up pretty fast. And so well, the best thing to do is pull the throttle back. And so I pulled the throttle all the way back, and that didn't happen any because I was still doing about 400. And then I says, well, I'll push real hard again on that right rudder and see if I can stop it from turning before you could pull up. And finally that thing slowed down after I pulled the throttle back a little bit, and it started slowing down in the spiral right there, and I pulled the thing up, and I was about 1,500 feet off the ground, and I had really got down pretty close to it. That thing was up about 450 miles an hour. And I got back at the base and says, well, you crazy pilot, you're just supposed to put the trim tabs on high-speed dives so you can do the controls. And so you learn from errors right there how to do these fly it properly by your mistakes that you made, and that's one of the mistakes. I never did get in a trim tab problem anymore. But we got out of the P40s right there and flew gunnery in the AT-6. Had a machine gun in the right wing, and we'd go out and shoot at targets. And they were pushed for a little time on those airplanes, and they didn't have time to fix the oil leaks or oil seals in the propeller. And to overcome that, they gave us a great old big bunch of rags, or string rags. They call them waist rags. And we would go up and we'd go at a pass and make a pass at the target and come around, and during that time the oil would leak out of the propeller and get all over the windshield where you couldn't see. And after we made a pass, we'd take this rag and be flying about 180 miles an hour. We'd run our hand around in front of the windshield and rub the oil off of the windshield so that we could see. And we had to do that on every pass, and every airplane was leaking, and they didn't have time to fix them. They was flying them night and day, and it was a thrill to stick your hand around on the windshield and wipe the oil off to where you could see. After we graduated from Eagle Pass, Texas, and did the gunnery and went on into twin engine training. We had to go to a twin engine training school because they didn't need any more fighter pilots in Europe at the time, and they wanted to make co-pilots out of the fighter pilots. So we went to, I believe it was Altus, Oklahoma, and I flew my first twin engine airplanes there. And we got through the twin engine course, and it says, now we have picked out all of the boys that's going to MacDill Field to team up on B-17s to go to Europe to bomb Europe. B-24s, they're making up classes down there of crews. And we picked out the boys that don't weigh 140 pounds, and y'all step forward when you call your name. So they called out my name. I didn't weigh but 126. And so you're supposed to weigh 140 pounds or more in order to fly a 4-engine airplane. So that kept me from out of the B-17 and B-24s. So they sent me back to P-51s in Bartow, Florida. And then I flew P-51s down there for, let's see, probably from February on up through maybe July. In July, we went to Tallahassee, Florida, to our shipping point to go to Calcutta, India. And of course, while we were there, all we had to do was report in early in the morning, call a roll, turn it loose all day. And we did that for on a Wednesday, then we did it on a Thursday, and on Friday they told us our train had been delayed because we were going to get on the train on Monday from Tallahassee and go to the West Coast on into Calcutta. And they said, well, our orders have been delayed. We wasn't going to ship out on Monday, but you still had to make formation on Saturday. So we made formation on Saturday, and then we made another formation on Sunday morning, and then Sunday morning they told us the war was over. They had dropped an atomic bomb on Thursday, I think, or maybe, and another one on Friday, or maybe Wednesday and Friday. And the war was over on a Saturday, and we didn't find out about it till Sunday. But we had a big parade up and down the main street of Tallahassee, Florida, and celebrating the war. And I stayed in about 6 months longer and got out of the Air Force at the time and stayed in the Air Force Reserve for a while and then to the Army Reserve. And that's about my excitement in the Air Force and the Army flying, and that's about all I've got to say about this. But in 1990, they looked like getting ready to have a war over in the Persian Gulf, and everybody was fixing up monuments to veterans. And I decided, well, that would be a real good policy to put something on the courthouse square with the veterans of 5 wars. That would include for World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and as the Persian War got started during that time, and we put the Persian War veterans in that too. And anybody that lived in Oglethorpe County who served in any of those wars at any time had permission to put their name on this veterans marker. And we set it up on the courthouse square and got all the names on it. We've added a few every year, and ended up with having about 650 names on this marker, which will represent all 5 wars. And I think that was one of the nicest things that we've done for Oglethorpe County, is to leave a marker down there forever. They also got a Confederate marker down there for the Southern Civil War of the South. They got all of the names down there on this one. So with including the Confederate War and veterans and the other 5, well, we really got 6 wars down there with all the people who served in the wars. All of them wanted their names to be put on. All of them not on there, of course, but they were hard to find and scattered everywhere. And but at the present time, we are covered from the Civil War on up through the Persian Gulf. Thank you.
Is there you did that rather well. Is there anything you can tell us about how it felt to be in the Air Force and trying to communicate with the folks at home,
Well, we, in my opinion, World War II was a worthwhile war to fight. And after a lot of afterthought about the Vietnam War and the Korean War, looked like it was necessary to fight them, I guess, because we did, and the Persian Gulf. But looked like to me that they were really, the people in the Vietnam War or the Korean War I were not given credit for the lives that were lost or the hardships that they went through. But it looks like we're going since World War II into a police-type policy over the world, and every time we promise somebody we'd defend their country for them with our lives, well, then that's the way it started out in Korea, and then the Vietnam War got a little bit more tangled up. In the Persian Gulf, we went over and fought them for the little oil country of Kuwait. But on the other hand, this week's news, it looked like we are sending just bukus of troops, mostly engineers, I guess, of somebody to even go into Central Africa to give them fresh drinking water and to feed the country. And I don't know how we're going to end up. Well, the Cold War, of course, is over, and we really don't have a worldwide enemy, but it looked like the soldiers who are going in didn't have or do not have the proper spirit that we had when we went in to defend the United States during World War II. It seems to be getting less and less, and I really don't know what the future will bring, except in World War II we were told that that was a war to end all wars, and there'd be no more wars after that. But it looked like you scatter around the country right there, looked like you got a new war popping up every 6 months somewhere.
If you were going to address an audience of younger people in, high school or college, what would you leave them about what you experienced during that era?
Well, I enjoyed flying, and the only way I could learn how to fly was during the war. But another little incident right there, I was in what we call a officer. I was a captain, and when I finished up with the thing, but I also flew in the Air Force, and in 1946 I got out of the Air Force, and we were a reserve officer, subject to call to duty for 5 years, and then they extended it another 5 years. In 1955, they said we had to, in order to stay in the reserve, you had to get these points every month and every year, so many points to stay in the reserve. And so we went to what called a paddlefoot school in Athens. There was a bunch of pilots, and they would meet and discuss this and have programs and a lot of paperwork, and we were really a non-flying outfit. And then they paid us in 56 and 57 and 58 and 59. They didn't promise to pay us, but didn't. In 1960, I transferred from the Air Force to the Army Aviation part and got back on flying status and did fly. And I ended up with this little airplane because I bought this little airplane and I rented my airplane, a civilian Swift. It was a 125 two-place airplane. I rented my civilian airplane to the Army for me to get my flying time in for 6 years, and they paid me for it. And after 6 years I paid for it, and then I got out. But I think the military is a good place for a lot of the youngsters to look forward to getting in, because I mean it gives them really a better foundation for life if they could serve a year or two in the military.
Anything you'd like to add about local history or your experiences?
I guess I've about covered it all.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Pleasure.
Maxwell?